We're live. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. I've got my buddy, Mr. Pete Merluzzi, here with me tonight. How you doing, Pete?
Good, man. It's good to see you, Brandon.
It is good to see you as well. We just met here recently, so it's going to be fun letting me pick your brain about some of the stuff that you've been working on and have been involved in.
Somebody's got to do it, man. I've been sitting here in my house alone for too long, so let's get going.
Yeah, same boat. I just decided to turn the camera on. Is the only difference. So if I'm going to sit here for 24 hours a day for the next year, I might as well get some of it on camera and see how it turns out. We'll see how much damage it does in the long run.
Exactly. And well, you've been busy anyway, man. I mean, this minefield thing that you're working on is shaping up to be pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to listening to the whole thing. So
yeah, I appreciate it, man. I'm very blessed to be working with the guys that are in this project, and and it took a little while to get used to, because I'm still as much of a fan as these guys as I was before this started. So when some days I'll just be looking down at my phone and me and Todd have been just bullshitting about like Seinfeld for like 20 minutes. It's like, you just kind of take a step back and you're like, I was just kind of bullshitting with Todd Kearns about Seinfeld for like 20 minutes. So,
when his retina detached when we were on tour, I had to send him home for the surgery from Russia. And I sent him the box sets of Seinfeld to watch.
Oh, that's great.
Because that was the same kind of stuff that, Todd's just such a good guy. And I've known Jeremy for many years now, and I've known Todd for a long time. So you've got some really great talent in this thing, man. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to hear the rest of it,
I appreciate it very much, man. I'm hoping everybody digs it when we kind of put it out there for everyone to check out.
It's great to hear Todd singing a lead in a proper rock band too, because he needs to be shown as that singer. The Took records are amazing, and that's a great band. But this is a cool new original project, and I love that. I love seeing that happen. And Jeremy's a monster. So
that was one of my mindsets going into this. Whenever I initially reached out to Todd, was it had been a really long time since anybody had seen him in a frontman position, and as big as Age of Electric was back in the day, and still is to this day, a lot of people know him from the Slash gig. But
absolutely.
A lot of those same people don't realize what a fantastic singer he is. So I was,
he's got.
Absolutely.
What a history he has without, even before the Slash period, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So let's kind of go ahead and jump into this. And, I was telling you while we were off air, I had a terrible time trying to just find a jumping off point, because I was looking at everything that you've been involved in and are still working on. And I was like, this is going to turn into like a 20-hour episode, because I just want to know everything about all of it. So.
And I can't shut up either. So once somebody starts asking me questions and wants to actually hear what's happening, I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut. So
perfect. This would be a good combination.
There you go.
This will make for a good one. So whenever we met down at the Christmas Expo, we were introduced by Mr. Ryan Spencer Cook.
Right.
Standing in there at the bar at the very nice event center.
Yeah, another great guy. Great guy.
Yeah, Ryan's a fantastic guy. He's quite the fella.
The three of them, between Ryan, Jeremy, and Phil, man, it's just such a nice group of people.
Dude, and it's crazy. It's the best of friends traveling the world and doing the coolest shit with each other. It's the
best situation a musician could ever ask for.
Absolutely.
I couldn't be happier for those guys either. I met Ryan and Jeremy when they were doing the big rock show on the Kid Rock cruise in 2013. And we've been friends ever since. We just hit it off really well. And we did a couple of those things together. And then we started kind of crisscrossing. And when Brent ended up playing with them in Gene's band, that just kind of closed the gap even closer. Jeremy was working with John Corabi, who I used to manage years ago, and John's still a dear friend of mine.
Okay.
And I'm one of those, like, I'm a huge John fan, right? So for me, knowing the other guys that were working with him and hearing that live record that they did together was just, made me proud.
Absolutely. It was really cool getting to see that stuff played live.
Yeah.
Especially John still sings his ass off on it, so
And his
that's
son's
always
playing
cool.
drums. You know, I mean, it was a great, you know, it was great to see that all finally happen. You know.
Of course. So I want to kind of backtrack a little to 2000. I think it would be seven then when Velvet Revolver put out Libertad or Libertad, whichever part of the world you're from, I guess decides how you pronounce
Yeah.
that album. So
Yeah.
uh, you got to manage that tour for the last part of it, I think, which is, if I remember correctly. So I just want to ask you a little bit about how did that come about? How did you originally get involved with Velvet Revolver?
I've been really fortunate in my career to have some really great people that I had met along the way, or that I'd known even prior to me really getting into the business, and kind of helping me along and advising me. And in 2008, like towards the end of the year, I've been doing the accounting for ZZ Top for about 5 years, and my
Okay.
time with them was winding down. And I took leave at the end of that tour, and you know, I kind of knew that something new was coming. You know, I didn't know what it was yet, but something was going to happen. And or end of 2007, I guess. And I got a call from this gentleman named Nick Kua, and Nick is a legend in the tour managing business. And his father happened to be my bass teacher while I was growing up. And we grew up in the same city. His family and my family, you know, a couple of Italian families that lived in the same neighborhood. They knew each other. He had grown up with all my aunts and uncles. It was a really like tight knit kind of, almost like, you know, cousinly, you know, relationship between the families. And Nick was the tour manager on an Ozfest in 2001, and I was a merch guy at the time for Slipknot and Papa Roach. And when I started to make the jump, or wanted to make a change, Nick was the guy that I went to and said, "How do I become a tour accountant? How do I become a tour manager?" And Nick introduced me to a guy down here in Florida named Rusty, and Rusty took me in, trained me, and started to outsource me. Nick, having been the Velvet Revolver tour manager for a long time, had prior commitments, because this new batch of dates were really like makeup dates from canceled shows from before, because of Scott's issues. And he called me and he goes, "Listen, I've got this band." He didn't tell me who it was. And he goes, "I got this band. I was going to do the tour, but I have commitments with another act that I've already signed on with." And he goes, "And I really think you're the only guy that could take my place on this." And for me, that was the biggest vote of confidence you could ever get, because this was one of my mentors in the business telling me that I was the one that should step in his place. So he said, "You know, it's going to be this long, and it's, you know, this is the kind of money it's going to be." And I was like, "Look, Nick, if you're recommending me, then yeah, I'm going to say yes." You know, I didn't know who it was yet, right? And I hadn't tour managed that many acts. I had done a couple of kid shows. You know, my first tour managing fortes were Bob the Builder and the Wiggles, right?
I had found that out earlier today,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, your rap sheet is just crazy.
Oh, dude, yeah.
And once I added in Bob the Builder, I was like, where does it end?
That's real gangster shit right there, man. That was,
absolutely.
One of the best things I ever did, right? And one of the greatest learning experiences I ever had. So, and then I did Megadeth. Oddly enough,
Okay.
I was hired as the accountant. They fired the tour manager a week before the tour started, and bam, here I am in Europe as a tour manager. I had no idea what I was doing.
What year was this?
It was the System Has Failed tour, so I guess
Okay.
2004 or 5, somewhere in
Okay.
there. Right?
I'm trying to think of who Ellison would not have been in the band.
No, Dave wasn't there. I had both of the Drovers were in the band.
Oh yeah.
And Jimmy, who had played bass for Iced Earth, McDonough, maybe.
I'm not familiar,
Jimmy,
but I think
sweetheart.
System had failed. I think that was the record that they brought back. Chris Poland played all the solos on that one. I think
Chris played. We didn't see him on the tour at all at that point, but yeah, it was a great album, and there was some good. And it was the comeback record, so it was kind of after David retired the band for the first time.
Well, he had the injury with his arm, and had to reteach him how to play guitar.
Yeah. Megadeth's an interesting world, man. There's a lot of stuff there that, Dave's a good dude. I think he's just had some questionable people around him, in and out. I think you find that with a lot of people. You just don't know who to trust sometimes, So it's a hard thing. But I had a great experience with Dave. He and I got on really well, and they when they found out how old I was, they were a little bit freaked out at the time, but that passed. It was but we had a good time with it, and I lasted a little while there. I helped put the first Gigantour together,
Okay.
and then I went back to ZZ Top.
Nice.
I didn't. It wasn't really my camp, right? Like I didn't feel like that's where I belonged, so I went back to ZZ, and I had a great run with them for many years. And then the Velvet thing came up, and Nick's recommending me for this, and I'm going, oh, by the way, he's like, all right, man, I'll get you more information in the next week or so. And I said, okay. I said, oh, Nick, by the way, who's the band? And he goes, Velvet Revolver. I'll talk to you later. And then
oh man.
And I started laughing, and I was just I'm like, oh boy, here we go, right? And and it turned into an incredible year. I did Velvet half the year, and then I got another great tour managing job right after that. So I had a really excellent 2008.
So I would assume that with your continued relationship working with Slash after this, was this where you got to kind of build your relationship with him? Was that tour?
Yeah. And Duff as well, and Matt, and Dave Kushner, all of them. We still are, we don't talk all the time, but we do have a great mutual respect for one another. And it's all really positive.
That's awesome.
I was blessed. I mean, it was a tough tour for obvious reasons. I mean, Scott knew he was leaving, going back to Stone Temple Pilots already. And there was
okay.
There was a bit of I'm hanging this over your head kind of thing going on. And his manager at the time was it was an enabler, and I can say that now, in light of everything that's happened, but it was not a good situation, so there was different camps, there was the band and the crew, and then there was Scott, and it was a hard thing, and it was my first conversation with the guys. The first show, I'll never forget this, was in Chicago. I flew in, I rode on the tour bus over to the gig with Nick, and the band guys were all with us, right? But I met them one by one as they came out onto the bus. So, I meet Matt and Dave, and then Duff and Slash kind of wandered out, and I, introduced myself, and they're like, oh, hey, welcome to the camp. And Nick's with me, and we sit down, the door closes, and they look at Nick and they go, so Nick, the hell are we going to do about this singer? It was just like, I looked at him and I went, oh, great. But we built a really great relationship through that, because everyone else on the tour was really focused and positive about everything. And there was a great relationship there. I mean, some of the crew guys had been with, Duff and Slash for years. And we had a great production manager, Tony Moon, and some great guys on the crew. It was just a really good family vibe, right? And we were all united on that front of like making this tour work, in spite of everything we knew was going on. So I built a really strong relationship with those guys because of the challenges we faced on that tour. And there were a couple of rock history stories that happened on that tour that I will never ever, I may never ever experience anything like them again. And they made me a better tour manager, and the thing about being a tour manager is that there's no book, there's nobody that has some kind of a guideline for you to go, okay, this is how it works. And, so-and-so, and you're either a good fit for the group that you're working with, or you're not, and you can't take that personally, because you got to live together, so sometimes your method is not the right method for the people you work for. This just happened to work out that my personality ended up being a really good fit for this group of people, and in the situation we were faced with, it tested all of us, you know. So it was definitely, there were some moments where, you know, my whole plan was just to keep the tour on the rails until we finished the last show. We lost some dates in Australia because of a surprise trip to rehab for Scott. Um, you know, and that was just, it happened. We were in LA, we did a show, and then suddenly he was gone. And we got an email an hour after the show or something from his manager saying, you know, Scott's going into rehab for 2 weeks, so we're not going to go to Australia. And so everything was booked. You know, all this stuff was, you know, what do we do, you know? So I learned a lot about, you know, those hurdles that get thrown at you and kind of just making the best of rough situations on that tour. And we,
Absolutely.
you know, it bonded us. We became friends. We laughed our way through a lot of stuff. Um, I saw, I saw people, you know, I saw real people in all of them. And, you know, it's a tough thing, you know, when you have this one guy that's in your band that's not only self-destructive, but kind of just situationally aware destructive. You know what I mean? Like he's
Oh,
just,
I absolutely get it. Yeah.
yeah, you know, and it was just kind of, it's sad. I mean, Scott really wasn't a bad guy. You know, he just had some demons, you know, and unfortunately just didn't have the tools to, you know, to deal with them, you know, to get through it. And it's sad, you know, because he's a talented guy. He was a nice guy, you know, and
Absolutely. One of the biggest influences on me ever personally,
yeah.
you know, and one of the best frontmen of all time. Take away his singing ability, the guys, you know, his dancing and his moves on stage were great. He kind of personified the rock star.
Yeah, and you gotta understand some stuff about his career and his like path to fame. And this is something that I learned while I was out there, actually. And you know, the truth of the matter is that Scott was in a band pre Stone Temple Pilots, or Stone Temple Pilots was called Mighty Joe Young before they were Stone Temple Pilots. They were very much a Red Hot Chili Peppers style band, a very funky, you know, different vibe, right? Some manager found them and said, look, I want to manage you, but I want you to sound like this. And it was like Pearl Jam, you know, we want you to come in and this is the kind of music we want you to make. We think there's something here, but this isn't it, right? So as a musician, if you put yourself in that space, you're forced to make a decision on, do I want do I want this on my terms, or do I just want this? And so they gave up their personality, I think, as a band to become Stone Temple Pilots. Change their look, change their name, change their sound, everything.
Which is so crazy to consider what that turned into.
Yeah.
You know, some of the best songs ever written, in my
Yeah.
opinion. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, that first record is unbelievable, you know, and it's not my thing necessarily, but that first album to me, when I first heard Dead and Bloated and all the stuff that was on that record, I was like, wow, this is, you know, these guys have got some riffs. They know how to write songs. I was, I was impressed. Um, and but you think about it from an artist standpoint and you go, wow, you know, I often wondered, you know, was that something that took a toll on him? You know, was that something that weighed on him because he was famous for something that wasn't necessarily what he had set out to do? And I often wondered that, you know, and I'll, you know, we'll never know the answer. I don't think anybody ever asked him that, you know, but it's definitely something when you think about it from a musician standpoint that you kind of, you know, you can see where that might have been an issue, you know?
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you sacrifice what your musical integrity is just for, you know, like you say, just wanting it, then,
Right.
you know, of course that could take a toll, especially with the extremes that that got taken to, the height of success that that guy experienced that most people never even come close to in their entire lives.
Yeah. And it makes you kind of wonder about a lot of the other bands that were kind of popped out during that scene, you know, because, you know, how many of them were that way? How many of them, I mean, we've lost a lot of those guys, an inordinate amount. I mean, many more than what we ever, you know, the 80s have been vastly untouched compared to what's happened to the 90s movement, you know? So there's definitely some questions there for me. It was a darker scene, obviously. But yeah, how many of them were doing what they loved and how many of them were a packaged, prepackaged deal is kind
And
of
that might not just be a rock thing in the
no.
90s. That's definitely more of a universal thing of
Yep.
any genre, because yeah, there's any artist in any genre, you can go find some old clips of them from before they got signed or something, and it's unrecognizable to what they're doing now.
They're doing Carpenter songs.
There's you can probably go find videos of me doing that somewhere.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So I don't want to hang on it too much, but you really got me hanging on something you said that Scott knew he was going back to Stone Temple
Yeah.
Pilots while this tour happened.
Yeah.
How early into that did he find out, and
Oh,
what was?
he knew before we started. I
Oh,
mean, it
okay,
was the guys all knew before we started. I mean, it was that tour had already been announced, I think. Either that or it was announced during the final tour with Velvet Revolver. And the guys in the band were they saw it as his exit, right? And I think that Scott went back and forth between, oh, I'm just going on, I'm just going to go do this and then I'm going to come back. And, but the other guys weren't part of that conversation. There was never a talk, it was kind of like, well, you're leaving. So we got to figure out what we're going to do now, so yeah, that was right from the get go. It was kind of a, it
okay.
was a, they knew from, before I got there. So it was definitely an interesting time.
Of course. So I want to fast forward a little bit
Yeah.
to where you worked with Slash again,
Yeah.
where when he started the solo project with, the album had a bunch of different singers on it, but then he takes it out on the road with Miles Kennedy,
Yeah.
and eventually Brent Fitz joins the band, who you had a hand in, and then Todd gets brought in, and all these different guys that, were in that situation from the get-go. How did you really get involved in that? And like I said, I'm sure a lot of your relationship got built from that Velvet Revolver tours. So
Yeah.
what was the conversation and everything like whenever Slash was starting that solo tour?
Well, prior to the solo record, Slash was doing a few all-star band things. They call them Slash and Friends. And the first one that we did, I got a call from the guy that was our production manager on Velvet Revolver, Tony, and he said, "Listen, I can't do these dates. They've asked me to help set this stuff up. Are you available?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I jumped in, and the first date we did was a show over in Norway for this big festival. The name escapes me, and it was down in a very odd, secluded part of Norway that I had never been to before. And it was on an island, if I remember correctly, which made it even harder to get to. But the idea was to go over there with this all-star band, and the band was Slash, John Five, Chris Chaney on bass, Jason Bonham on drums, Teddy Zigzag playing keys, and then Frankie Perez was going to sing some. Uh, there was a girl from another band that was opening some of the Velvet shows that did one song with them as well, but they opened that show. It was something Tom Zutaut was managing. And then Fergie, Ronnie Wood, Ozzy, and I think Adam Wakeman was there with Ozzy. So I was the tour manager. There was only about 3 or 4 of us that were doing all this stuff behind the production side of it. I had a backline group that came with me. We all got on a plane and flew over to Norway to do this stuff. Now, Fergie, Ozzy, and Ronnie had never been to a rehearsal. So it was just the band in LA rehearsing. And then when we got there, everybody else showed up. Now, going in, there were no tickets sold because they didn't think that anybody was going to show up. They thought, oh, there's no way this is going to happen down here. And whatever the deal was. So we got off the plane, and every media outlet in Norway was there waiting for us to get off this plane. And you watch Slash, John Five, Chris, Jason, and Teddy all walk down the steps. And then later that afternoon, Ronnie Wood from the Stones flies in, Ozzy and Adam fly in, and Fergie comes in. So now ticket sales are, off the chart. All of a sudden, it's just this mad rush to buy tickets to this thing. So the show goes great. It was a bunch of covers and mixed with, a few Slash songs here. They did some Ozzy tunes, did some Stones, Fergie did Black Dog, Sweet Child of Mine, and Barracuda, I want to say. And
Perfect.
it was just mind blowing, you know, for a guy, for me. I'm like, what's she doing here? And then she got out there, and I there's a shot of rehearsal, and it's from the side of the stage, and you see kind of cutting across, and I'm standing over in the wing with my arms crossed like this, with this look on my face, and then she starts to sing, and I think my jaw just hit the ground. I was like, I didn't
What
know what to say. I think they did Black Dog first, and I just was like, wow. You know, it was just this unbelievable thing. And it was great, you know, and it was one of the coolest things I'd ever been a part of. And we did another one a couple months later in LA that was a charity event. And that was when I found out about the solo record, because Andrew Stockdale from Wolfmother came out, and they did By the Sword
okay.
a good 6-7 months before the record was going to come out. I think somewhere in that 6-month window, I think.
Okay.
And it was a great event. Billy Idol, Ozzy, you know, Andrew Stockdale, Perry Farrell, like Dave Navarro was in the band on this one. Travis Barker from Blink 182 was playing drums. Steven Adler and Duff came out, so it was the first time the three of them had been on stage together in a bunch of years. I mean, I remember Billy Idol, who I had also tour managed right after Velvet Revolver, he came out and did Out to Get Me, which was incredible. You know, like there was just this fun,
That's
it was
awesome.
this crazy group of people. I mean, I was one guy running up and down stairs going, okay, you're on next. And Tom Morello was there. I mean, it was just like, I, to this day, I'm not really sure how we pulled that gig off. We had the backline guys and then me. That was pretty much it. You know, there were sound guys, but there was no one else to wrangle. And I had a couple of the people from the charity helping me, but I was really the one, you know, chasing all these people around this theater in LA, trying to make it go. And it was a blast, you know. And that's when I first met Jeff, who manages Slash. We had talked during the Norway thing, and we may have met during rehearsals at that thing, but this was where there was now talk about this new project and putting a band together. And at that point, Slash had, you know, he was telling me, look, we're going to do some auditions, and I've got this guitar player guy, and I've got this, a buddy of his is going to play bass, and he goes, we need a drummer, so we're going to audition a couple people. And I said, okay. So I helped him set it up, and I suggested that he see Brent, and we had a couple other people also chime in on this that seemed unconnected, right? Like there were people that, like Kevin Churko may have been one of those people, and Kevin and I don't really know each other. We've met once or twice, but you know, there was a strategy behind it. Now, you know, I can talk about that now because it's so far down the road. Because I was just nervous that maybe he wasn't going to take a suggestion from me seriously, because you know we had worked on Velvet, but you know that was it. You know, so I
It's
wanted
still
to make
Slash
sure.
though. Like, I mean, what does Slash need? You know, somebody recommending drummers to
Right.
him for. So
But
yeah, no,
the
I
thing
get
for
it.
me was, I looked at it like, hey, look, I know what you're known for, and I know the bands that you've had before, and I think it's time to start looking at a different, you know, different pool maybe. So when Fitz got the call, you know, we were both really excited. But as soon as I mentioned to Slash that this guy had played with Alice Cooper and Vince Neil, like there was enough there where Slash went, as soon as I knew he played with Alice, I knew he could handle whatever I was going to throw at him. So when he went in, I got a call not long after the audition, and I always got a text from the guitar tech during that time. And he goes, this guy's amazing. And I go, hey, what that good, huh? He goes, he's only played one song. He goes, I think he's already got the job, you know? And I was like, cool, you know? And that just made me happy, because at least my headspace was the same as what he really needed, you know? And I think that kind of solidified my real relationship with Slash. At least I was someone he could listen to, you know? And that's not something to take lightly, because not everybody interjects themselves in that, but being a music guy, it's kind of part of what I do, you know, when it's called for. So it was a good time. And then of course Brent brought Todd in. The other bass player guy didn't work out, and the band kind of took its shape, you know, and Miles came in and the rehearsals started, and you know, we had Andrew there for a while because we were doing the TV shows to promote By the Sword, and that was how that all started. So And
Very
then
cool.
3 years later and 10 to 10 and a half months of touring each year, usually outside the country, it was time for me to step out. So, sometimes you got to make those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you about when you met Todd Kearns for the first time. Do you remember when that happened, and can you share that story?
Yeah. We were in, so he got the call, they were out there jamming and, I was still in Florida at that point. And, Fitz said, look, this bass player guy's not working out. He goes, I'm bringing somebody in. And I said, oh, okay, cool. And he goes, he told me who it was. And I said, okay, great. I looked Todd up and I was like, oh man, this guy's going to be perfect for this. And Todd did, no audition. He just kind of walked in with a bass, had no idea what he was going to be doing. And, I think Brent probably sent him some songs to listen to on the drive. They literally called him. He drove over the next day from Vegas. So he probably had a bunch of songs in his car listening to it on the way in. Takes his bass out, plugs in. They jammed for over an hour. No, that was it. Like he walked in, it was just like, yeah, this is the guy, and I mean, that's how talented Todd is, right? I mean, and Brent is the same guy. They are these people, they're the musicians that, I wish I could have been, like these people and a lot of guys probably do, um, they're guys that I wish had been found earlier. I mean, I knew of Brent because of Union. I was a big Karabi fan,
Absolutely.
big Bruce Kulick fan. And when that band came together, I was still doing college radio. And so when that album came out, I was like, wow, this is like there's like a real rock band, that's making a record where the songs are great. And you go back and listen to those two studio records, man, there's some great, great stuff on there.
Oh yeah, Union kicks major ass.
Yeah, and it's super underrated, and those records are hard to find, and if you do find them, I don't even know if they're both digital at this point. I don't know if they're even available digitally. So
I know that the first album's on Spotify. I was listening to it recently, and that's the only reason I know why.
yeah, I behind the scenes, I'm actually working on a little bit of a project trying to find a home for vinyl reissues for both of those records.
Very
Because
cool.
I have no vested interest in it other than the fact I have 3 of the 4 guys in that band I know really, really well. And I really love the songs, and they have not been represented on vinyl. I mean, the first record did come out, but it was a very limited pressing. And I think in today's world, it would just be a nice way to reintroduce the band, digitally, but on vinyl to the Kiss and Motley fans. I think that would be
Absolutely.
a killer package. So I'm working on that with a great label out of New York right now. I'm hoping we can finally make that happen, but we got to get the permission to do that from the label that owns it. So we're working on that now.
That's awesome. I'll
Yeah.
definitely have to score copies of those whenever that
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Whenever I was down in Florida, that one thing I did when I went out away from the expo was to go
Salty
record
Dog.
shopping. Yeah,
We went to the
absolutely.
It's one of my favorite spots. There's a
And
couple of good ones, but that
I
one's one of my
bought
favorites.
Slash live at the Roxy on vinyl there, ironically.
I have held that record in my hand at that store before you bought it.
Perfect. I've got that. You saying that on camera now, so when I put it on eBay in a few years, I can add an extra $5 or $10
You'll
to
be
the
able
resale.
you'll be able to get a discount from somebody for that one. Mhm.
Perfect. Very cool.
Yep. Yeah.
So you had worked with Brent a little bit before that, I think, but whenever you brought him into that, was there a specific reason other than it being a little different than the pool of players that he had been working with recently that you wanted to bring Brent and work with him
Well,
on this for?
I knew he was looking for something, and I knew what kind of a guy he was, and I knew where Slash was, in his life, and how he was sober, and all that kind of stuff, and I just thought the playing was a good fit. I mean, as a music fan, I listen to a lot of music as well still, and I just thought it was going to be a good fit. I knew Brent of course, Brent's history with Alice was great because he was basically Eric Singer's swing. You know what I mean? It was just like if Eric had Kiss dates, then Brent was filling in for Eric on Alice. And you know where Slash's influences come from. You know, Aerosmith and
Of
Alice are
course.
two of his biggest influences, and it made sense. You know, but I also thought on a personality level they would get on really, really well, and they would push each other. And I think I knew Brent's musical background would be beneficial for Slash as well. So when he brought Todd in, I didn't know how good of a rock singer Todd was. You know, I mean, I knew he was a singer because I knew of the band in Vegas, and I had seen a bunch of clips, and the guy could just sing anything, right? So as we were going through rehearsals, and you're listening to Todd sing the high harmonies above Miles, it was it was kind of mind blowing, while he's playing the bass parts. So I was just really dumbfounded. And as the tour started, the shows went from 90 minutes to 2 hours to 2.5 hours because they were starting, they were having so much fun. The set list just kept getting longer. And I looked at Slash one day and I go, I'm going to suggest something. And I said, I don't know how you're going to take this, but we were in an airport someplace. I was buying him a coffee. I think we were standing there together. And I go, you got two lead singers in this band. And I said, Miles isn't as angry as some of the other songs that are on the album or some of the Gun stuff. I said, but Todd has got that like punk rock kind of spirit, I said, maybe you let Todd do like Dr. Alibi and the Iggy Pop song on the
Okay,
record,
so
We're Gonna Die.
you were the one that suggested that. That's awesome.
I suggested that, and I said, you should also consider having him do some of the angrier Gun stuff, right? And that was
like Out to Get Me, which he ended up doing.
Well, there's a good story to how that came about too. So there were a couple of songs that I mentioned, and he was kind of like, I don't know if I want to have someone else singing the Guns N' Roses stuff right now, because we're still kind of getting Miles established. And I said, yeah, of course. I said, but when it comes time, you got to give Miles a little bit of a break. These songs are not the easiest things to sing all night long.
Yeah, especially for 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And the set list was creeping, and so about a week or two later, Slash, I planted the seed with him about it. I can only make a suggestion, that's all I could do. And I think he started to see what we were talking about. And so he asked Todd if he'd be interested in doing it. And he goes, yeah, let's do them in sound check right now. So they go out on stage and Todd just sings the songs. Like it was just, there you go. And they were like, okay, they were in the set that night, and then that was, it kind of became this thing. We were in Europe and Hailstorm opened for us for a few shows. And Lizzie came out and did Out to Get Me, because they had recorded that, and it was great. And the Hailstorm guys and girls are amazing. Their crew, the band, everybody was always fun to deal with, and just good people, so Out to Get Me went over really well, and that was when I went to Slash and I said, you could have Todd do that every now and again, and you could have Todd do You're Crazy or something like that. And they ended up doing both of those eventually. It was just planting the seed,
That's awesome.
I really have to say, I love the fact that they actually listened to me on musical ideas for any reason. I mean, because there was really
it's amazing, because I'm thinking as right now, and I've told Todd this before, so when Slash started that solo tour, that was the first time you got to see Slash play some of those GNR songs in like 15 years. Like he hadn't played like Night Train and like Out to Get Me and stuff like that in a super long time live. Yeah. So me being 13 years old around when that first solo tour started, I guess you're the one that I have to thank for getting to see Slash play those songs live for the first time.
I mean, there were plenty of Gun songs in the set. You know what I mean? Like that was nothing to do with me in the beginning. I mean, it was Miles was singing the ones that he felt good about, that Slash really wanted to do. And, when you hear him do Night Train, when you hear him do Brownstone, he does a killer job on those songs. the one that I loved, which I didn't really know that well, was the Beggars and Hangers On track from the Snake Pit,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I have to say this. There are certain songs that singers sing that they may not have recorded originally that they own. And to this day, Beggars and Hangers On to me is the song that from Slash's past, Miles owned it. Like it became his song as far as I was concerned. I've heard every version of it. I've heard different people sing it, but Miles's version of that song
It
was
fits him very well. It fits his vocal style
it,
great. And
it really
you still got to tip the hat to Eric Dover who wrote
oh
it
great.
and
Yeah, of
absolutely
course.
fantastic.
There's just something, look, it's like when Miles did the first time I ever heard him do Fall to Pieces was an acoustic version of it on a radio station. It blew me away. It was better to me. It was better than the original, and that's a hard thing to say because it was one of Scott's signature songs from the Velvet Revolver period. But there was a different kind of humanity to it when Miles sang it. It's hard to describe. I mean, and we can argue about it all day long, right? I mean, it can be your opinion versus my opinion is going to be different, but the first time I heard him do that, I was just floored, and that was as Miles's personality was starting to kind of come out through all these songs that they were doing. Because I mean, it was hard, he's singing everybody else's material. I mean, from that record alone, he's doing Ian Astbury. They were doing the Fergie track, which was amazing when they did it live. They were playing the Chris Cornell song, the Kid Rock track. That the list goes on, and it was just one of those things where and he delivered them all beautifully. But there's certain ones that just hit me harder than like Ghost. I love Ian's delivery of it, but it'll always be Miles's track to me because I saw him do it live every night for 3.5 years. You know what I mean, or whatever it was, and it was just a great rendition. He owns certain songs, and that there's a lot to be said for that. I remember the first time they were going to do Promise, which was the Chris Cornell track.
Yep.
And Miles was really conscious of the fact that so many people compared his voice to Chris's, and this whole thing. And I said, dude, this is your gig, right? It's your song now. You sing it the way you feel comfortable singing it. You got it. We had a lot of good talks in that time, but I just really love the fact that I had such a good rapport with the guys that we could sit and have those conversations, and somehow something I said made sense. So that was kind of I'm really, that part of that relationship with all of those guys was spectacular.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I want to fast forward a little bit. I was reading on some more stuff, and this is the last part of me, like fangirling out on the Slash and the
Hey
GNR
man,
stuff.
I had 24 years of this thing, so you can ask me anything you want.
Well, cool. So I saw that you were involved with the GNR reunion tour
Yep.
for the first, I think it was 2.5 years basically that it was happening. So what was your involvement with that, and just kind of brief me on what that experience was like being around that when it first started?
So it was kind of a weird combination of events. I was out with AC/DC. I was the tour accountant on AC/DC for the Rocker Bus Tour. And we got the call kind of midway through that Guns was actually looking at doing something. And the production team from AC/DC was a lot of people that had worked for Guns way back when. So there was a desire to bring that team back. And I was part of that team now, but I also had my own history with Slash and Duff and, and some of the other guys. So I just happened to be part of that team at the time. And I was also called and asked if I would be interested in doing it. And that was a great, great thing. So then, of course, Brian has to step out of the tour, and eventually Axl gets asked to come out and do the remaining AC/DC dates. So now the Axl camp is out there, and we're starting to get to know each other. And I was already on for the Guns tour anyway, because the AC/DC thing was supposed to have been done by then. And so we ended up working with them, and then rolling into the Guns tour, going back and forth actually for a little while there, because there were dates that we did with Guns, and then we went back and did AC/DC dates, and then we went back to Guns again. So I was the tour accountant on Guns N' Roses for 2.5 years. It was a very challenging tour to be a part of with my background, I think, or my history with some of those guys. There's different camps there, you know, and there's politics and just like anything. But after 2.5 years, I was ready to kind of step back. You know, they were kind of doing they were working a little less like sporadic legs, and I needed some other things going on, and I got called about doing Judas Priest. So when I finally left, I stepped away to go tour manage Judas Priest.
Very cool.
But the Guns thing was a great experience. I mean, I think in the beginning, the hard part for everybody was, you know, is this going to work? You know, it was really
Absolutely.
like, are they going to be able to deal with each other? Are they going to make it last? And after about the first 2 weeks, I mean, it was clear that there was a good chemistry again, and there was a friendship that still was there, and they were able to put a lot of stuff behind them, you know, work through it. However, that all happened. I stayed away from the band. You know, I was dealing with the finances there. That was my focus. And I was there to help the band in general, everybody, you know, not one side or the other. And that wasn't how it was supposed to be. It's a band, you know? So I tried to stay neutral and just kind of keep stay in my lane, as it were. But it was always great to be able to pop in and see Duff and, you know, who I hadn't seen in a while, and just, you know, sit and talk with Slash and just catch up. And, you know, there was a lot of family out there, you know, and it was great. And I'm just lucky that I was, you know, able to be a part of that whole thing for such a long time in really different capacities in different camps. You know, I mean, the Velvets, the Slash, and then the Guns N' Roses thing all together. And I think there's a few guys that did it all. I think they were there for Guns in the day, you know, Guns with and without, you know, the Velvet Revolver, you know. I had a couple of the guys for sure were part of the Slash solo stuff along the way too. So it was a lot of really cool people that came together from all these different histories that we got to be this one big, great team. And God, what a great crew, great production. You know, Opie is the production manager out there, and he's the best in the business. And I got to work with him on AC/DC, and I had toured with Slash opening for Ozzy when he was out there on Ozzy too. So there was familiarity and this great history that we had. I mean, I had actually met him and toured with him for the first time back in early 2000s on an Ozfest. And it was just great to be part of his team, because he's one of those guys that's a legend in the business in his own right, you know, and he's done some of the biggest tours of all time. So.
Absolutely. So now you don't even have to answer this. I just want to throw it out there, and if you can answer it, that'd be great. If not, no sweat. So how early on did you know about the GNR reunion happening?
Ooh.
Like I said, I know it's a weighted question.
No, I'm just trying to remember. I think the first time we started to catch wind of it was in 2015. I mean, we hadn't been out on AC/DC very long. It had just started up, I think, I would say within a couple of months. You know, and we didn't know when it was going to happen. We just knew that there was talk, right? That there was actually communication happening, and you know, that first hurdle had been gotten through, you know. Steadily things the more rumors started to pick up, or we started to hear, yes, this is going to happen. We're not sure when yet, but you know, this is being worked on, and it was great. I mean, I was excited for them at the time. You know, I thought, okay, you know, this is going to be a big deal for them, and they've all got their other stuff they can do, but you know, are they going to, I didn't expect them to go in and make new music for that run. I thought it was a test run to see if they could actually get on. You know, and then 2.5 years later, you know, it was still going.
So. Of course. Now, having a relationship with Slash and Duff from back in the day, did you ever think that was going to happen before it did?
I knew that it was always going to hang over it. Whether it happened or not, I couldn't tell you. It was hard for me in a way. I mean, I saw Guns back in '88 live.
Okay.
I saw them open for Aerosmith. Right, it was one of my first shows as a kid, first real rock shows, and it was horrible. It was one of they showed up late, like a half hour late as the opening act. They
Oh,
sounded
oh
awful.
man.
It was just this, like, it was not a good night for them that particular night, you know. But the energy that they had and that power, it was before they really kind of, it was as they were starting to take off, you know. And it was interesting because I remember watching them even as a kid. You know, I think I was 11 or 12 at the time.
Okay.
And I remember standing in the crowd going, I don't know what this is, but this is like, there's something happening here, you know. And then Aerosmith came out clean and sober and just killed it, you know. I mean, it was that, I wish everyone could go back and see Aerosmith on Permanent Vacation, because that tour was just amazing. I mean, the impression that that tour made on me as a kid, you know, it was just, I don't know, that show, I'll never forget it, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, cool. After I've wasted an hour just fangirling out on Slash and GNR and Velvet Revolver and all that stuff, there's so many more cool things that you're involved with. So for anybody that doesn't know that's listening, you run Blackbird Entertainment, which is a plethora of, or
Yeah.
plethora. Like I said, this is another one of those words. It depends on where you fucking live, how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
So go ahead and eat me alive in the comments for the way I pronounce that. I live in Kentucky. I'm used to it. So whatever.
It's the Southern
But
interpretation.
yeah, whatever. Yeah. Hey, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean, that's all that matters. So that's the way we do it around here.
Yeah. Blackbird Entertainment started years ago. I was still with Karabi. I was still working with Karabi when I started it. And it, you know, it's kind of evolved over the years. And it was just a way for me to have some kind of an entity to do other projects outside of my touring. The Monster Circus was something that I did early on with this, with my friend Tony Montana, who was in Great White back in the day. And Tony is the front man now for Shadow and the Thrill, which is a band that I manage, which is a very, like, if you could take Gary Moore and Richie Kotzen and smash it into one guitar blues electric thing, that's what Shadow and the Thrill is, right? So it's this combination. It's got an element of Robin Trower, it's got a little Tommy Bolin, but it's, to me, it's one of the best records that's come out in the last 10, 12 years, easy. Tony did an incredible job. He's an incredible singer, and he's a great song guy, and a great guitar player. But he also plays bass, harmonica, and dobro on this record. He does, you know, he does everything, and I'm just proud to be a part of that. So we're still working that out to blues and rock radio shows, and we've got a new single coming out in the next month or so, which is the title track from the record Sugar Bowl, which back in November of 19, we won Louder Sounds Track of the Week with that, over 9 signed artists who had massive followings. I don't know how we did it, you know, but it's a killer song, and the song spoke for itself. So the video is coming out. They did a great cover of Gnarls Barkley's Crazy, which is absolutely stunning. The guitar playing on it's amazing. And it's a great record. And then Doomslide is a project that I am a part of. It's my thing with another buddy of mine. And it started out as just a fun covers thing that we were doing. We used to play in bands together, and we had this, because I was touring so much, I couldn't really play anymore. And I just had this idea that I wanted to start recording, because that's what we could do. He's living in Carolinas now. I'm living down here in Florida still. And the technology allowed us to kind of keep playing together, which was great. And so we get to the point where we had 10 or 11 tracks, and we're like, yeah, why don't we put this out? You know, and he wanted to do it, you know, it was like, oh, let's just do it digitally. And I said, I got to have a vinyl record, man. I wanted vinyl for this. So I learned how to do vinyl, and I learned about the process. So we did the Shadow and the Thrill with Deco Entertainment out of New York, and we did the Doomslide record with Blackbird Records, which is my company. So we did the vinyl, and vinyl to me is art. And I like colored vinyl. I like the patterns. I like all the stuff that people are doing with it. So we did, for Shadow and the Thrill, we did this cool neon transparent purple with a silver splatter. And the Doom Slide record is pretty badass. It's a neon green, deep purple hand pour.
Okay,
So when you
nice.
make it, they put down one color and then they press the other color on top of it. So when you pick up the record, the A side looks green with a purple bleed through. And then when you flip it over, it's a purple record with a green bleed through. It's just
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. So, I love all that stuff, So, and it was a great learning experience to see how records are made, and get into that whole process of what you need to do and how it works. And the album's a lot of fun. We've got a couple of videos out. We did a cover of Not Your Stepping Stone from the Monkees, which is kind of like, the whole idea is if Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Mountain did these covers. So that's detuned, ridiculous. there's a lot of it's ridiculous, but we had such a good time doing it. So we did Stepping Stone was the first one we put out. And then we did a cover of Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Round, which
Okay, nice.
I love. Yeah, and it's heavy as hell. It's like an Alice Cooper track, the whole look of Doom Slide is Plague Doctor. It was done before this whole thing happened, which is odd, but I had this idea about I wanted to kind of remain slightly anonymous while I was doing this project. So I came up with this idea that we were going to wear these Plague Doctor masks. And and we did this, it was a little bit tongue in cheek. You have to keep in mind, I have a good sense of humor about how the business works. So that was my idea for it. And it's been so much fun to do it. And we're doing a new video now for our cover of George Michael's I Want Your Sex, which is awesome. And we have, we've
this
got
is
another
fucking
one.
awesome.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you got to hear it when you watch it. I know you're going to go and watch it now because it's funny. But the whole thing to me was it's an experiment because we really don't know what to do anymore in this business. There is no path. You put out a rock record, what do you do with it? Unless you've got $80,000 to pay radio to play your music, you're not going to get a lot of airplay on commercial rock radio stations. And it sucks. Payola is alive and well. And for lack of a better way to say it, it's a bunch of bullshit. So it's been really interesting to find. I mean, I only did 300 copies of the Doom Slide record. I've only done 500 of Shadow and the Thrill. They're super limited edition. We probably won't do second pressings of these, at least not anytime soon, So these first pressings are going to be rare, and to me, hard copies of music is collectible anyway these days, right? And
Absolutely.
You're a vinyl guy, so my vinyl collection is not out of control. It's probably about 400 or so, but it's not. I know a lot of people with much worse, because that goes with all the CDs and all everything else.
You should see Matt Starr's collection.
Oh, I can't even imagine those guys. I mean, I know like Todd has. There's a lot of people that embrace the streaming stuff, right? I'm not a big fan, right? I don't like the fact that 1 million streams only makes an artist $7,500. I think that's absolutely
Maybe
asinine.
after
Right.
taxes and paying mechanicals.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, and if it's all cover songs like Doom Slide, you make nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, there's stuff that, I just don't see how that's feasible for people to keep making music all the time. If you want art to continue on, there has to be some kind of a return for people.
Absolutely. And you hear these interviews with those guys like the Spotify CEO where he says stuff where like bands should be putting out new albums like every 6 months. And it's like artists can't even afford to do a full album in a 3-year span anymore. So
you can't make a record the way you used to make it. It's not. I mean, that's the thing about the Doom Slide album is we recorded that on Cubase and GarageBand. You know what I mean? And when you listen to it, and Wade, the guy that I did this with, Wade Jackson, he plays all the guitars, he plays all the drums, and I play bass and sing, right? And he sings some of the stuff as well. So it's this crazy, thing that we're doing this, just the two of us. And then we had Jimmy Bones from Kid Rock's band, who also plays on the Sugar Bowl record from Shadow and the Thrill.
Okay.
Plays some amazing keyboard parts for us. And the guys I love having that where you can get you get these people involved that you love, and that's what it's been about for me, was to do this fun project. And it taught me a lot. You know, I've learned a lot from it, and I want to keep doing it, you know, but I want to do it on my own terms. I don't have any desire to become a famous musician at all. That's not I want to do it. I just want to make records that people look back on and go, this was a fun record, you know, and that's what music is for me. It's, I want to be able, I want to have some, walk in someplace and have somebody playing that, you know, our version of, you know, Midnight Confession from the Grassroots, and somebody going, man, I love the way they did this or whatever, and not know that it's me or not know that it was Wade, you know, and just kind of be like, yeah, I mean, that's what we did it for. It was supposed to be fun. I mean, that's the best part. You can't play out. We can't, you know, but nobody's playing live shows right now. And it's really just it's a odd time, you know. So the fact that I was able to figure that out and kind of push me into this, I really want to get into this reissue thing, and I'm hoping that, you know, this relationship that I've started with Deco can lead into something cool for both of us, because I just want to do it for my own, you know, experience. I want to keep my hands in the music world somehow and do something fun, you know. And if that means getting new pressings of albums that have been long out of print, or, you know, bands that haven't done reissues, to get them to do them, I think it's a great way to get, you know, to remind people of some great records, you know. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
And as a vinyl guy yourself, you know that, and I've talked about this before on here, a lot of records in the 90s and 2000s
never
came
made
out in
it.
a time where I'd say 75% of those records were never even printed one time on vinyl. So,
It's
you know,
amazing
it's,
how many of the late 80s records are so hard to find because there's not many of them out there,
or if you
you
do,
know.
they're that really flimsy, cheap vinyl that
from
sounds
from
like shit.
from Korea. Yeah, you
Yeah.
find the Korean pressing. Yeah, it's hard, man. I mean, some of them, and some of these records were made to be heard on vinyl. You know, some records are crap on vinyl. It's just, but there's, you know, that's the technology, that's the recording technology. And the cool thing about a label like Deco that I'm talking to is that one of the guys that's behind the company is an engineer, and he's done some great remastering projects, and Alan Duchess, and he helped us do the Sugar Bowl version for vinyl. You know, he went and took the masters and made it ready for vinyl, and he did such a beautiful job with it that I just think that it's a great natural progression. If I can make it happen, I'm excited to do it. I love the guys there already. You know, my relationship with them because of Shadow and the Thrill is great, and I like that it's small and manageable, and that it's music guys. You know, and the
Yeah, of
fact that a bunch
course.
of them are Italians is really cool too. For a bunch of us, you know, so. But you know, it's I just think it's, as I move forward, I don't know when the next tour is going to be. You know, I've got another job, you know, and I'm working now, and it's different, you know, and I don't know when the next tour could come up. It may be another year before anybody's out there. So, I mean, you know, we all got bills to pay, you got a house to pay for, you got, you know, can't sit around. So, you know, I'm one of the lucky ones, you know, that's
Absolutely, you know, and it just hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel with all the vaccines and stuff that's coming out. I know everybody has their own opinions on those,
yeah.
but realistically, there that is going to help out in the long run. I feel like so.
Yeah, it's gonna do wonders for people's peace of mind, I think, more than anything. And you know, the real enemy that we have is the fear and the panic. You know, we don't really know what we're dealing with even now, and it's you know, it's just such a weird thing. So if the virus helps people feel better about living again, then I think that that's intangible. You know.
Of course. So I want to talk about these reissues a little. You know, I ask
Yeah,
fun questions like this all the time on here.
yeah, yeah.
Are there any, you know, dream projects you would have as a vinyl collector? Are there certain, do you already have stuff in mind that you're
Oh yeah.
after this
Oh
that you're going to
no, no,
try to go
I've
back
got
and
a
do?
list. Yeah, I've got a list going, and I've got some buddies in the vinyl world. You know, guys that are collectors that have some great ideas too. And it's just a matter of if we can get them. You know, I mean, I love that there's so many of these labels out there that think like this. There's a lot of. I mean, are you a fan of Trouble?
I'm
Okay.
not as familiar with them. Yeah, I'm more
So,
versed in the 70s and 90s stuff. They were 80s, if I'm correct, right?
yeah, they came out in the
Or
80s,
Trouble,
but then
Eric Wagner. Eric
yes,
Wagner. Yes. Okay.
yes,
So I know some. I'm friends with some guys who did. He had a project called Lid in the Mushroom.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I did know them actually. I'll
Eric,
have to retract that. Yeah, Eric Wagner in
see,
Trouble. Yeah.
Eric's voice is one of my favorite hard rock. Like I love that stoner doom kind of stuff, right? Like the Sabbathy, modern Sabbath kind of stuff is how I always looked at it. And Trouble during the 90s when Rick Rubin got involved made some incredible records. And the self-titled Manic Frustration and Plastic Green Head were records that to me like define that genre in a lot of ways, you know. And for years, the self-titled and Manic Frustration could not be found anywhere. And there's a label that just put them out. They did a reissue of them both, and they're both spectacular. And if you're a vinyl fan, these records are awesome on vinyl. So even though they're kind of on the edge of the digital time, and Rick Rubin was producing, they were still analog recorded albums, and they're just so big and nasty sounding on vinyl. And I love getting to hear them again. I mean, if you find an original Manic Frustration, it's $300, you know. I have an original self-titled, which I found at a record fair once, and I've just, you know, I got to preserve that baby. So
Of course.
I had to get the reissues for that. But that's, you know, the Union stuff is the first project that I really want to make happen. If I can make that happen, if I can do it the right way with the guys and with the right label, that's the one that I want to make happen first, you know?
Absolutely. Definitely keep me updated on that
Oh,
because
I will.
I
Yeah.
will score some copies of that the second they go on
Yeah.
sale.
Yeah. I mean, it, those records to me, it's funny now to look back. When I was a kid in college, I went to a Kiss convention in Orlando in like 98, and I saw John and Bruce play acoustic. And they did the Eric Singer project as well with Carl Cochran. They played live on that thing. And I have a videotape that I shot of them playing the acoustic set, right? I had the big old, you know, on your shoulder video camera. and, and I got the acoustic set really close. Audio's great on it. And I met them there, you know, as a radio guy, as a fan. And you know, fast forward 10 years later, I'm doing the Monster Circus, and I'm managing John. I invite John and Bruce to do the show, to be a part of it. And then they suggest we bring Brent in as the keyboard player. So here I am 10 years later, you know, with three of the four guys from Union on stage playing together again. And they became friends. And all three of them are guys that I still talk to all the time. And those records are vastly important to me now. You know, I loved them when they came out, but now they mean that much more to me. So if there's anything I can do to help other people hear those records, then that's, you know, what I'm doing. So
That's
I do
awesome.
my Noise Factory show is all about that kind of thing. You know, it's playing music that I love, just turning people on to stuff that's new and, you know, rock music that's out there.
Perfect segue. I was about to ask you about your
Yeah.
podcast. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and jump into that. So you have
Yeah.
your own podcast called The Noise Factory.
Yeah.
So kind of, I guess, go ahead and take the mic and let everybody know what that's about.
Well, calling it a podcast is a bit risky. I can't do that. It's totally pirate radio
Okay.
because I play music. I can't do it on a podcast. It's all pirate, right? So and right now I'm having a hosting issue with it, and I'm trying to get the files re-uploaded to a new host so I can get the shows back out there because right now it's down. So I'm getting ready.
Well, I was trying to listen to the latest
Yeah.
one right before we went live because I'd seen that you had played Minefield on there.
Yeah, I have. And I played, both the first two tracks for sure. I took some time off for the holidays, you know, December and January, I always kind of lay back because there's not a whole lot of new stuff going on. So I wanted to wait. I was going to start back up in February. And then I had this hosting issue where the files were taking up too much space and it's overloading my stuff. So I'm trying to work that out now. My web guy does a great job, Danny Dunn, and he's working on it with me, trying to figure out a new solution for that. But the Noise Factory started 9 years ago while I was out on the road with Kid Rock. And it was all about sharing songs from new bands and new records that I was finding. And, you know, when I get to travel, I still go to music stores. I still find things. And a couple of people and I were talking about it, and they're like, you know, you should really try to do something with this. You know, if you want to do something later on, you know, it could be a good thing for you to do. So I started it on my own. And I've had, you know, so it stopped and started and stopped and started a couple of times over the years. But yeah, I started it almost 9 years ago, and it's just a place for me to play music and share music and talk about stuff. And one of the things that I've been talking about a lot, and I got to pick it up when we get back on, is, you know, we've been living in a world where propaganda has been used, you know, in ways to manipulate popular music, to manipulate Hollywood and all kinds of other things. And it's been being used for a long time. And my whole premise was rock and roll the first victim of the cancel culture? And the funny thing is that it was just kind of a story for me to work on originally, something that I was going to get into. And what I found was an incredible amount of evidence that makes you think that, yes, it was, you know, and it's been an intention since the 50s. And you can go back and look at all the weird shit that's happened in the music world, and how rock was always this thing that scared the establishment because it was, you know, it's anti-establishment. Rock and roll was always kind of the voice of the youth. It was something new and scared people, you know. It was threatening to rock the apple cart, you know. And there's a lot of stories through 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, all the way through to the 90s, when it's pretty clear that there was some manipulation of what was popular and what was not, and what was, you know, what was threatening and what wasn't, and how it was handled. So it's a pretty interesting thing to read up on and study about. So I was just starting to talk about that during the shows, and I did the 50s and 60s already. My next episode will have the 70s, and then I'll get into the 80s and 90s after that.
That's awesome.
So just kind of a fun, it's a food for thought thing more than anything else. It's not really a conspiracy theory, but I mean, it's there. There's a lot of stuff that people just don't realize the context of, you know, but that's all for you to interpret. You know, I'll just dump facts on people and be like, oh, by the way, this is what was happening, or this is why this went on. And, you know, you figure it out. You know, for me, it's just an interesting thing to talk about, you know, when you're trying to fill airspace where you're talking to yourself on a podcast, you know, because it's just me. Sometimes you got to have something cool and interesting to keep people tuning back in. So I do that. And then the last thing that's on the Blackbird site is some voiceover stuff that I've started doing this past year. I did some real education on that. It's something I've always wanted to do. And I finally found myself an agent and did a proper demo reel and got all those things in place. And you know, I do auditions constantly. So it's something that I enjoy doing it.
That's
and
awesome.
Something that, yeah, if I can make a little extra pocket cash doing that as I move forward, it's something.
Can you talk about some of the auditions that you've had? Is it anything that people would know?
I've only gotten a couple of like official paying jobs. I've done some other stuff for buddies of mine for podcasts, actually. But there was one job that I did for a new video game called Tide Turn that's going to be coming out, and it's I'm one of the characters in this game. It's like a battle game, so I did the voice of one of the characters. And there's a new one that I just did a couple weeks ago for a wine company called Montefello, and I did like the English speaking version of the commercial that they had done in Spanish someplace else. So
okay, very cool.
Waiting to hear that, and I'm up for a couple other things right now. I got fingers crossed on a couple of little projects.
Oh, nice. We'll get you to intro the next Monfield record.
There you go. Yeah, if you need any Vincent Price-esque haunted mansion type things, you give me a call. I'll do the spoken word in the middle of your next epic track somewhere.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we can fit it in there with our cover of Something Off the Elder. So
there you go. Yeah, Under the Rose. Yeah, I'll do the whole thing at the end.
Oh no.
He had the light in his eye. It's just that old.
Those poor late 70s Kiss fans.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, man, that record has a few tracks on it though that
are awesome. That's what's so conflicting. Like, I'm a big fan of I really love that song.
I love Under the Rose. Only You is great. I mean,
World Without Heroes is a very well written song.
World
You know,
Without Heroes is great. And
there's stuff on there.
The Oath is freaking great.
Fucking Ace's song, Dark Light.
Light,
that's the one thing that's like, even as weird as Kiss got on like The Elder, the Ace songs still sounded like Ace songs.
I'll tell you what, man. I love Escape from the Island.
Oh yeah.
Is one badass instrumental, and I never thought I'd ever say that about a Kiss record. and I'm a huge Kiss fan. I have been since I was a kid, and I love that record. I'm not an Unmasked fan. I can't stand that album. That's the only record.
Oh
that's
man,
the only one. That and Peter Criss's solo album. Those are the only
See, I'm a big fan of Unmasked. I like some of the stuff on there. I like the Ace songs.
I like Naked City a lot.
Naked City is awesome.
Naked City with a different production would be a really interesting track to hear these days.
It's it's definitely far off the spectrum from what Kiss was doing. You know, what people were used to. That was a weird time period for them, but like we said, there's still stuff to be appreciated from all those records.
Absolutely. And for a band that's been as long as they have and cranked out as much original material as they have, they don't have too many duds.
Oh no, because their duds would be, I would assume, like The Elder or something like that. And I'm sure if you go look at the certification for that, it's probably not far off from everything else in their catalog.
My favorite Kiss record of all time is Creatures of the Night, and that only went gold when it came out.
I'll have to send you a picture whenever we get off of here. I sent Jeremy and Phil a copy of them as well. But it's a bootlegged version of Creatures of the Night with Vinnie Vincent on the cover.
I've got one.
the purple one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've got mine is blood red.
Oh, okay.
And I also have the 10th anniversary live triple album that was recorded in LA from that tour, which is it's a bootleg.
From the Creatures of the Night tour with Vinnie.
With Vinnie. Yeah, it's a live show from Universal Amphitheater in 1980.
Okay, I had no idea that existed.
Yeah,
you got to find it. You got to find it somewhere online and link me up to that.
Yeah, it's a Japanese bootleg import kind of thing, and they're expensive. I found one a few years ago and just.
I'm sure. I had thought I had seen some deep Kiss bootlegs until I got to that Kiss Expo down in Florida, and I'm digging through those crates.
See, I missed all that. I missed that stuff. I didn't get there until I got there late. I came in to watch the show.
I was digging through there, and there was records $400, $500, $600 in there that I was just like, I don't even understand what I'm looking at right now.
Do you have the originals too?
I do not. I don't own any copy of the originals.
Originals 2 is pretty hard to find, and I found an incredible one. But prior to me finding the right one, I found one that I thought was the right one, but it ended up being Originals 2, and it was like the live shows, so it was like a bootleg thing from the Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun tours. And I'll tell you what, man, the packaging on that is better than almost any record I've ever seen.
That's awesome. It's crazy how well some of these bootlegs are done, man.
It's amazing. It's amazing. But I'm a big Alice Cooper, a big Kiss fan. When it comes to their stuff, I think I've got most of it. At least something from each period on vinyl. So it's the Alice Cooper reissues are amazing. Some of them they're so cool, and I just love that. You see the evolution with those two bands. You see where Alice started things and Kiss picked it up and just ran with what they had done. And, the song catalogs from both of those bands are incredible.
Oh, of course. People can say what they want about the 80s Kiss stuff, but those are still good written songs.
I'm a little upset with them right now because last year was the 35th anniversary of Asylum, and they did not do an anniversary reissue of that record. They did Unmasked and they did Alive.
Yeah, they did a lot of the catalog actually. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it,
and they missed Asylum. And if there was ever a record that would have been super cool on colored vinyl, it's that one. You know what I mean? So,
they could have done it like the cover, the old.
Yep.
That would look
and they
great.
Still could. I hope they do. I hope they do it.
Because there you go, Gene. If you're listening, someone looking for you, bud, right there.
It'd be a shame to skip any of them. If they're gonna do it, they might as well do them all.
Yeah.
I know the Love Gun one came out through Walmart last year.
I want to get. I've got the Love Gun one.
Yeah.
The one I want to get that I don't have is the Green Dynasty one. That just looks really fucking cool to me.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a good one. It's yeah. If you need to find one, let me know. I might know a guy.
Okay, cool.
We can work out a trade.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have a couple of copies of the Minefield record laying around.
There you go. Yeah,
perfect.
perfect. Yeah, when you get that vinyl, I want the limited edition vinyl. Send me a test pressing. How's that?
Right, yeah, there you go. Yeah. I don't even think I'll ever get to hold one of those things.
Yeah, you should. They should send them to you to approve.
Well, there you go, Golden Robot. If you're listening, take notes.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, if they're going to do vinyl, you should get you guys should all get a copy of the test pressing so you can make sure it's the way you want it to sound.
Actually, I might have. I just, this is my first experience. I could have just made them sound like assholes for no reason. They could have been like, "We were totally going to send them a test pressing. What the fuck's he saying?"
Well, that's what usually will happen when you do a record and they redo it for vinyl because they'll remaster it for the vinyl.
I'm a rookie, man. You got to think. I'm just a pup.
That's part of what I learned. That's part of what I learned this past year, right? Between the Shadow and the Thrill record and the Doomslide thing. We used Pirates Press for both of those, which is a company that got a base in San Francisco, but they press in the Czech Republic. And they do a great job. And we got the test pressings, and it's pretty wild to, the first time I had the Shadow and the Thrill record, the first time I had the Doomslide record, and to hold them in my hand and be like, wow, this is...
Was that the first vinyl that you had held that you played on?
Yes.
Doomslide?
I'm not a recorded musician prior to Doomslide. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And to put it on and listen to it, it was pretty wild, man. I mean, it was just something so much fun. I don't know what it does. I don't know what it did, but there's just something so nostalgic about that experience. I don't know. And for somebody younger like yourself, I don't know what it is for you. I don't know what the appeal is. For me, it makes me think back to when I was a kid and my uncle would put on a record for me to listen to, when he first played me live at Budokan, or when he first played Alive 2, or, Too Fast for Love, or,
what I mean?
Yeah. Like those records when I remember hearing that stuff for the first Ted Nugent records, geez, the first Ted Nugent album on vinyl, it's just like, it's amazing. As a guitar player, you've got to put that record on and be like, I can't believe this is all on one record. You know what I mean? Like,
well, the only thing I can say about that is, so I got to play a gig last night, and the longest song in our set was Stranglehold. Dude, so
it's one of my favorite songs to play in a band. And I'm a bass player, but
see, our bassist hates playing it. I call that song out, and he's just like, "Fuck you," under his breath.
Solo?
So
the bass solo.
So we don't. When it goes into, I think, F, that transition right into the beginning of that. We just stay on A because we have this thing. It's just my 3-piece, and so we have we have different drummers that play with us. So if we're playing in Tennessee, we've got guys we'll hit up down there. If we're in Kentucky, or if we're where the fuck ever, we've got different guys. So to kind of not have 20 different versions that trying to keep track of which ones we play with the same guy or whatever.
That song is so good. I mean, look, the key to being a bass player is putting down the groove, right? And that song, without the bass, that song is nothing.
Now there is a section in it because I draw the solo out for 2 hours or something, and I give him that spot before we come back in with the come on parts. Where there's probably a good minute of him just noodling around, and then we come back in with that. So
right on.
Yeah, it's fun, but that's great guitars. Yeah, and a funny story I was telling somebody the other day. Just Ted Nugent got brought up because he's all in the news right now. But yeah,
he always is.
We won't talk. We won't jump into that. So before I lose half my viewers on this episode, but. Shit. What? Okay. So, Stranglehold. I was telling somebody the story. I was like, man, when I first heard that when I was a kid, it was always like, why does Ted Nugent sing this song so much better than everything else that I've heard him sing? And then I found out about Derek St. Holmes and was like,
Derek
I was
hates
like, that's.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, that was a great combination of guys. I mean, Derek's voice on those Ted songs like Dog Eat Dog and stormtrooping, you know, I mean, hey, yeah, Hey Baby, of course, but you know, Stranglehold is just, not only is it one of the greatest guitar songs, but it's also one of the greatest rock vocals probably
Oh
ever recorded.
yeah.
And Derek just, he can still do it, you know. There's
Absolutely.
I saw him with the Whitford St. Holmes a few years ago when Brent was playing drums for them, and they did Sharpshooter off the first record, and God, what another great vocal, like a great riff, but the vocal is just awesome. You know, you forget how good that guy is, you know, and it's,
Yeah.
I love it. I love that he's still out there. I love that he's still singing as well as he ever has. And I tip my hat to that guy, because that voice, man, is just monstrous, you know.
I'm totally with the sentiment that that is it has to be one of the most underrated rock vocal recordings of all time.
Yeah.
And it's not fucking easy to sing either. It's not just that it sounds good. It is technically difficult because it's climbing. It's the, you know,
His range is massive, you know,
yeah.
and it's just so cool to hear it though.
Yeah. Well, dude, I thank you so much for coming on here and, you know, just letting me pick your brain for the last 2 hours almost now that I'm looking
Awesome.
at. So,
Yeah.
you know, everybody go to blackbirdentertainmentinc.com. You can find everything that's
Yeah.
really, all your stuff has been centralized to that one location. So,
Yeah, that's what I did it for. I wanted it all in one place. And, you know, the Doomslide record is only available there. So, and there are only 300 copies, and there aren't that many left out there.
what do you have coming up in the immediate future with Blackbird?
You know, the Shadow and the Thrill is my main focus with Blackbird. That, you know, and my voiceover stuff. Doomslide will continue to put out videos and have fun and do others. And there's a couple of funny ones that we put out on YouTube as well. The YouTube channel is definitely worth checking out. You know, and I got to get more active on that. I think it's a whole new world for me, right, with that whole thing. So I think there may be a Doomslide TikTok in the works. We're working on that,
Nice.
and I think it's too ridiculous not to do one. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, with my sense of humor, I think it's something that I've got to dig into. But yeah, I think I'm just going to keep plugging away with that. You know, I don't know that managing is something I'm going to delve more into at this point. I think working on the acts that I have and keeping those passion projects going, that, and I really want to get this reissue thing working somehow in a partnership with another company, and I want to make that happen, because that's, you know, you're not going to get rich off of that by any means, but it's something that I want to help get that music. I want to get music back out there to people, especially in cool, you know, in cool packaged ways for the fans. So, you
Absolutely.
know, I am a
Especially
fan.
when it's good records as well, you know?
That's the key, man. I mean, those are the things that I'm passionate about. That's something I want to do for my own enjoyment, as well as for the people that I've worked with over the years. If I can track people down that were part of these different projects and get their music back out there in a new way, give them a reason to get a digital distribution. You know what I mean? It's amazing how many of these records aren't out there that you don't realize, you know? So I'm really hopeful that I can do that with some people and just keep things moving forward, you know?
Well, very cool. Well, Pete, thank you so much for coming on here. Me and you'll be able to say goodbye off air.
Yeah.
But thank you for everybody tuning in tonight. This was a lot of fun. Pete, thank you
Thanks for
so much
having me,
for letting
man.
me pick your brain on all
Anytime.
all
Anytime. It
the
was a
cool
lot of fun.
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
nice that somebody cares about the stories.
Oh, you mean I've
So,
got Slash tattooed on my arm? You just gave me a free pass for just fangirling out for
there you go.
2 hours, so it was a lot of fun for me. We'll do it again, and anytime that you have something to pimp for your website or you got new
You
music
got it.
coming out, hit me up and we'll do this anytime again.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good talking with you.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream, but thank you all for tuning in so much. I will see you tomorrow with Chris Williams from Accept.
Nice.